There's a bunch of stuff in our airspace above us, and if you're not freaking out, like if some dude was walking up and down your street at night and it was dark and you were like, hey, I don't know if they're carrying a weapon, we don't know who this person is, we've never seen them before, they're cloaked in random clothing so you can't see their face, you'd be calling the cops, right? Being like, gotta come over, like something's freaky, I'm worried, paranoid. And the idea that we're all sitting around like, yeah, I wonder what that is.
3 or 4 US bases in the UK were invaded by these in December. And guess what? The US government had to lean on 60 British forces to help them figure out what was impeding US airspace. And again, at Langley in Virginia, they had to move an entire fleet of F-22 stealth fighter jets, next generation fighter jets, became immobilized.
Guys, what a week we've had. I mean, we had a great panel discussion yesterday. You heard it. I was just like, so much going on. The Carter funeral, the interactions that everybody had, the Trump press conference, Zuckerberg and Facebook, the meetings at Capitol Hill, the cuts in the media. I mean, it's like boom, 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 boom. And we're like basically, 7 days out from just over 10 days out from the inauguration. This is going to be crazy. I mean, I'm excited. And the word that we keep hearing out of the Trump administration is that they are ready to go. We've said this, but like we're talking about 100 executive orders in action, immigration, you name it. By the way, yesterday, Biden's acting head of the border says, yeah, we could have done more. Are you kidding? I mean, these guys are all trying to like save themselves now. Like, oh, I didn't know that was that bad. And I mean, it's insane. But today, a conversation you will hear nowhere else. And just trust me when I tell you this. Matt Laslo is a reporter who's spent almost 2 decades up on Capitol Hill. He is covering drones, UAPs, UFOs, who knows what, and why don't they know it? I mean, as interesting as of a topic it is, I think it's kind of weird, scary, concerning that there are drones flying over a country that we can't tell you where they're from or if they pose a threat or not. But if you don't know what they are, how can you not know that they pose a threat? That's my point in all this. So I'm just telling you, this concerns me, and we're going to get into this because I think you need to know what your lawmakers know. And trust me when I tell you, you will hear this conversation nowhere else. All right, before we get into our discussion, I want to tell you about one of the things that we can all be doing to help prevent an unfortunate incident. We talked about having a fire extinguisher or first aid kit. Well, God forbid something happens in a choking event. I have one of these. It's a life vac, and I think you should too, because choking incidents are preventable. You know right now, I'm telling you right now, in the same way that you have a fire extinguisher or a first aid kit, because in case something happened, you want to be prepared, get a life vac in your house. It is unbelievably easy to use. Police departments, fire departments, restaurants, cruise lines are all stocking life vacs, because if something happens, anybody can use one of these. If you ever had to use the mask part of it, they'll replace it for free. If your kid's school doesn't have one of these, you can order one for free on their website, lifevac.net. It's lifevac.net. If something were to happen, don't regret not having one in your house. It is the easiest thing you can do right now to be prepared in the event of a choking incident. Go to lifevac.net, lifevac.net now, .net. Do not wait another minute. Get this now. All right. Another thing that we know about is that high blood pressure is the number one risk factor for mortality, right? 1 in 2 adults have high blood pressure. That's a 50-50 chance that you or someone that you know is a ticking time bomb. I don't want to be alarmist. It's just a fact. But there is something that you can do. This is where 120 Life comes in, right? I've been having one of these now for every day for the last month. They are unbelievably delicious. But beyond that, it's a great tasting superfruit juice mix that can actually lower your blood pressure. It's formulated with ingredients that have been shown to help naturally control high blood pressure, and it's endorsed by thousands of health professionals. Just go to 120life.com and use the code SPICER to save 15% and get free shipping. The folks at Life 120 at 120 Life are so sure that they can noticeably lower your blood pressure in 2 weeks, they'll actually give you your money back if it doesn't work. You've literally got nothing to lose. Go to 120-120life.com, 120life.com, and remember to use code word SPICER to save 15%. Without further ado, I want to bring in Matt Laslo. He's a veteran congressional correspondent, professional, a writer, an in-demand public speaker that has been covering Congress since 2006 and has taken a very special interest in UFOs, UAPs, drones, and has a website called askapol.com where he asks politicians about what they know. Take a listen. Hey, Matt, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So I as I was telling the audience before you joined, like you're the guy that's at the forefront of all this. And I'm so excited because, you know, if you had this conversation 4 or 5 years ago, people would have been like, this is wacky. And now with all these drone stories, it's becoming a lot more real in terms of who's controlling things. Is it foreign governments? Is it foreign entities, et cetera? So I want to kind of go through this slowly. And I want to just start with what was the talk of the town, the talk of the country before the holidays. There were all these drones over New Jersey. Everybody's freaking out. No one knows where they're coming from, who's controlling them. Tell us what you know about the drones that were over New Jersey.
Well, and this is where, first off, if I wouldn't even have been I've been covering Congress 19 years now, I wouldn't even have taken you seriously if you brought this up 2 or 3 years ago. And that's where we have seen a lot of attention brought to the broader UAP issue. But as you asked, it was really spurred on at the end of last year with all these drone incursions over New Jersey. And the crazy thing, even though we drop about $1 trillion a year of our taxpayer dollars on the Pentagon still has not told at least New Jersey lawmakers and lawmakers up and down the East Coast. They have not given a satisfactory answer to those lawmakers on what's been above U.S. skies. And now, yeah, some of them are, everyday folks just out there flying, recreational, hobbying drones. But that's not what people were freaked out about, and so this is where we've kind of seen from the Pentagon, FBI, even Department of Justice, they were on Capitol Hill testifying about this this December. The federal government has not given a good response. And it seems like right now, at least with Capitol Hill, there's just anger and bipartisan frustration. One, that it doesn't seem like the Pentagon and other officials even know what's above U.S. airspace. And then two, the fact that they're just dismissive and saying, this isn't something to worry about. Republican New Jersey Congressman Chris Smith, he said in an open hearing in December that one of their Coast Guard officials off the coast of New Jersey said that there were between 13 and 30 of these drones that were going after one of their 47-foot Coast Guard ships. That number is so insane, between 13 and 30. That's because the Coast Guard has no idea what they're looking at. They don't even know how to count.
See, that's what I think is fascinating. That this gets into my underlying question. Is it that they truly don't know, or they're lying to us?
That is the $1 million question, my man.
But don't you think when you say that, look, if you're the Coast Guard, let's just play this out for a second. The scenario that you just described, right? The Coast Guard is saying, look, there's what did you say, 15 to 40 drones, whatever?
13 to 30.
13 to 30 drones. And the Coast Guard, if they knew what it was, right? So to your point, if I know my neighbor's got a drone and they're flying it outside, I go, my neighbor's got a drone. That's what's happening, right? If the Coast Guard knew that Matt Laslo has a bunch of drones and he flies them off the coast all the time, they'd be like, okay, that's Matt. He's playing with his drones. When they're saying openly to members of Congress, hey, there's a bunch of drones. We count them, but we don't know where they are. That is concerning. That leads me to believe that they actually don't know what's going on.
And you're not alone in that. Just before I came on with you here, I was talking to Senator Tim Kaine. A lot of you may remember him because he was a former vice presidential candidate.
Yeah.
But he's also senator from Virginia. And in December, him and the other senator from Virginia, Mark Warner, who happens to have been, at that point, the chair of the Senate Intel Committee, they sat down with Pentagon officials, pressing them on incursions like we saw over New Jersey at the end of last year. Well, guess what? A year before that, they had those same incursions over Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. And
okay, so just hold on. So we know, I mean, you have the Coast Guard saying, hey, they're flying them over our frigates. You have Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. You've got these military sites in northern New Jersey, including the president's home. A simple answer, in my lay opinion, would be fly your own drone up and see who it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Has that been asked?
Well, and here's the thing. So Senator Kaine last year, he pushed the head of Northcom and the head of Southcom in a public hearing on, hey, what was over Langley? And this is December 2022. And so for a year now, Senator Kaine and Senator Warner have pressed the Pentagon and saying, hey, what was over Langley? And guys, this shut down Langley. There are a fleet of F-22 stealth fighter jets that, cost billions of dollars. They were shut down. They had to move this fleet. Wall Street Journal did an amazing piece, deep dive feature on it, I believe, in October of last year. The general's claiming some of these objects were 16 feet long. And in New Jersey, they're saying 20 feet long. And those aren't just your average buy them at Walmart.
This is insane, right? I just don't understand. Like, it's almost like when Trump held that press conference the other day, he was asked about Syria, and he said, I'm not going to disclose to you what I would do, because I'm not going to, we're basically telling whoever this is, hey, we're not smart enough to figure out who you are. Right? I mean, if Kaine and Warner, the head of the Intelligence Committee, a senior member of the Armed Services Committee, if they're asking and not getting answers, it would lead me to believe it's like if you're the guy who commits a crime and you're always wondering, are the cops on to me? Do they have any leads? And you're listening to the radio, are the cops coming after? If you're the bad guys right now, you're like, holy smokes, these guys have no clue who we are.
And that's the unsettling thing. And I asked Senator Kaine that. I was like, are you unsettled by this? And he goes, yeah. And he's a member of the Armed Services Committee. Yeah. That's America's military. And a thing that I believe he let slip, and I haven't had time to post this at my site, askapol.com, but Senator Kaine said that if they are, some of them, he says, yeah, might be off the shelf. But he goes, the technologies that us as the U.S. government have to disrupt off-the-shelf stuff, he's like, that didn't work on these. And that...
Well, you think about it, these guys, the Chinese can fly a spy balloon over the United States for several days over our most sensitive sites. That's a spy balloon. It floats slowly. You can just sit there and watch it. If we can't get a spy balloon, I think I'm a lot more concerned now about drones.
But again, that's where I kind of got into this issue, because I was like, wait, again, America, we drop about $1 trillion of our taxpayer dollars annually, and we let our airspace be invaded by a balloon that the Pentagon then let float from over Montana, where it was first spotted, to they didn't shoot it down till it got to South Carolina off the coast. And that's where we're now seeing a lot of senators, including Kaine, when he was last year, pressing those top generals about this issue, he said, the problem with Langley is that's a suburban area. And he goes, we don't know the rules of engagement, as in the Pentagon doesn't know the rules of engagement for what to do over, suburban America with these repeated sightings now of technology that our government doesn't seem to know what they are.
Right. But at some point, this gets back to the question I asked a moment ago, which is, I get, maybe you don't want to shoot it down because you're in an urban area where you could just fall somewhere or whatever. But why not just fly your own drones? Is our technology even at the point where we could say we'll put our own up there and we'll take pictures of whatever's there?
I think if anything we're learning out of this, whatever this is that the US government is woefully unprepared. And one thing Kaine did say that kind of leaves that out is he goes, well, maybe they're, not being honest with Congress. Maybe they do have it. And so with that being said, Tim Kaine is a member of the Armed Services Committee, and Mark Warner, he's the head, at that point, was the head of the Intelligence Committee. The government doesn't, at least according to what I know, and yeah, all governments lie, and this government lies, as will the next, but you don't, and especially Mark Warner, he's a member of what's called the Gang of Eight.
Right.
And that's sacred. That is the 4 members of
Do you think
leadership.
when they talk to you, Matt, you've been doing this, 2 decades, right? As a reporter, as a guy, like I would assume a lot of times a member of Congress or a senior government official says, Matt, unfortunately I can't comment on that. I can't discuss it. Which would leave you maybe as a reporter to guess, do they know and they're not telling me, or do they not know, right? But it sounds like the conversations that you have with these folks, they're admitting, I don't know. I don't have a clue what's going on, which is vastly different than I can't tell you.
And I wish I could report to everyone watching that, oh, they're telling me off the record that, hey, they have this under control. No, off the record, they're more emphatic and dropping more curse words, because Congress right now is so frustrated that and one thing Kaine brought up is that, the federal bureaucracy does get sticky on purpose. They're good at hiding things from the American people and from Congress. And so that's where Congress has kind of started doing more of a full court press, exploring this issue from the Intelligence Committee. And, if the Intelligence Committee knows about it, then maybe a member of the Armed Services Committee doesn't, because they have a top secret clearance where others don't. But when I get Mark Warner one-on-one, and he's vice chair of the Senate Intel Committee, he's frustrated. He doesn't have answers. And he usually is read in on, when the US government goes in and we, do a strike and take out Osama bin Laden, the Gang of Eight, the heads of the intelligence committees, House and Senate, and then the leaders, Speaker, Majority Leader, and all of them, they're supposed to be read in on this stuff. And right now it seems like they're being read in. There's just nothing to read them in on, because there's just confusion. And this is where the Pentagon's pointing to the FAA, FAA is pointing to the locals. Everyone's pointing away from themselves. But Congress is kind of, at some point, they're demanding they all get in a room, FBI, FAA, Pentagon, and say, hey, what is this? Because right now, it's definitely a national security threat, if not more.
All right, I hate to interrupt this conversation with Matt, especially so much I'm learning about these things. But if you are someone who has a fire extinguisher or a first aid kit in your house, you know why. Because God forbid something happens, you want to be prepared. In the same way, I've got one of these. It's a life vac in my house. If a choking incident were to occur, I am ready, and you should be too. These life vacs are now all over the place in our country. Police stations, fire officials carry them with them. Restaurants, cruise lines, everybody's got a life vac. You should have one too, because a choking incident is preventable with a life vac. It's easy to use. I hope I never have to use it, but I know that if God forbid something happens, I'm ready to go. Do not be caught without one. The best part is, if you ever use it, LifeVac will replace it for free. It is an easy investment that you can make right now. Get your very own LifeVac at lifevac.net, lifevac.net. Don't wait another minute, because literally your life or someone that you love could depend on it. Lifevac.net. Now, back to the conversation with Matt. For a while, they started to say, we don't know what it is. I mean, John Kirby, one of the White House spokespeople, says, there's no threat, but we don't know what it is. And I kept saying to myself, how can you reassure the American people that we're safe either I mean, and I'm not trying to be a jerk about this, but I truthfully, like, how can you tell me I'm safe if you don't know what it is? So either, this gets back to my earlier question,
Amen.
either you're lying to us that you don't know what it is and you do, or you're lying to us that you know that we're safe, because how could you reassure someone's safety if you don't know what it is, right? And the thing that's so interesting is that I've been on your site, Ask A Pol, where you go up to these members of Congress and whatever, and you ask
a
them questions.
poll, as in ask a politician.
Right, ask a politician, right? But the thing that's interesting, and you just alluded to this, is that you've talked to, like, it's one thing for a rank and file freshman member that's on the Small Business Committee not to be read in on this stuff. But when you're talking to a guy like Mark Warner, who is, as you pointed out, he's part of the Gang of Eight. This guy, they tell him our most sensitive secrets. And so when he's expressing frustration about not knowing, that leads me to believe that they really don't know, because he would say to you, Matt, I can't discuss this. You know that this is something I can't talk about, or this is classified. Unfortunately, I'm not able to discuss. But when he's expressing to you frustration about not getting answers, that has to suggest to you, as somebody who's been doing this for a long, long time, they really don't know.
And that's what's so bewildering about it. And I think right now it's good that Congress finally awoke to this, because there has been, a UAP investigation going on in the House. And that one, brings the far right Freedom Caucus folks along with the far left folks like AOC or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Congressman Jamie Raskin, who's going to be the new top Democrat on the Judiciary Committee in the House. The reason they're AOC and Raskin, the reason they're at the table on this issue is because they're skeptical of the military-industrial complex, especially when it comes to military contractors. And so there has been suspicion that, hey, maybe there are these SAPs or special access programs within the executive branch that Congress isn't being read in on, even though Congress is funding them. And so there is suspicion and mystery around, hey, maybe this is Northrop Grumman. Maybe this is Lockheed Martin. Again, with a close to $1 trillion a year budget for our Pentagon, there's a lot of money being spent on cool toys. But
why wouldn't you do it out in the desert? Like, if you wanted to, like, there's plenty of places in America where I figure you can fly a bunch of drones that would maybe go undetected. Northern New Jersey doesn't, and Langley Air Force Base do not seem like places, if our government was behind this, or Lockheed or Raytheon or whomever, right? Yeah. That they wouldn't be like, hey, let's go do it in Northern New Jersey where everyone's going to see it. Let's go do it somewhere in the desert that no one's going to notice.
And don't forget, we've also heard these complaints out west. At the start of last year, Senator Gillibrand from New York, she's on both the Intel and Armed Services Committee. She was out on a tour, a classified tour of Nevada Air Force bases, and then also meeting with contractors out there. She said this is a persistent problem out there. And what she's been fighting for is new sensors. And this blows my mind, because after the balloon intrusion at the start of, a year and a half ago, after that balloon intrusion, what the Pentagon at least told Congress is, hey, we don't know what's in the sky at this level. We know what's in the sky at this level and this level. How do we not know what's above America's skies?
Right. I mean, dude, if I'm in New Jersey and I can look up and see it, this isn't like some huge plane 40,000 feet up. It's right there. And I guess the thing that I think there's two levels, and we'll talk about like UAPs in just a second, but like I'm actually less, as an American, I'm less worried about it being a Martian than I am the Chinese, or the North Koreans. Like, I actually think that we have a greater concern from a earthly foe than from some space alien.
Oh, 100%. But that's where it's interesting when Kirby, as you brought up, comes out and says, hey, don't be worried. Don't be worried. But they still have no idea what's above American skies. Technically, everything that we've been seeing is a UAP, as in they have no idea what it is. It's an unidentified object. And that's where Congress, once that element comes into it, UAP or UFO, then they get skittish and they, revert to jokes and eye rolling. But it's like, hey, the U.S. government, as of now, and they just testified, again, Department of Homeland Security, FBI, and DOJ testified in earlier December, mid-December on this, or I think early December, and they said they have no idea what these objects are. And that's unsettling. Like, how do you not know what these...
So you talk to, you on your website, you've got all these interviews in these interactions with these politicians, which is why it's Ask A Pol, right? Do they, and I've listened to a bunch of them, and it seems to me that there's like at least two major groups. There are the guys who really want to get at the bottom of this. And I don't know if you would agree with me, but I think Comer maybe is one of them, is like, I really want to understand this. There's the Warners and the Tim Kaines who are like looking at this from a true national security interest. And then there are some that seem interested and intrigued, kind of like they want to know, they're the people who are like, what are you wearing to the event? They're just intrigued by it. They're not scared of it. And I guess what I'm trying to ask you, Matt, is there a sense of alarm among lawmakers that you sense?
So not alarm, but not confidence. And usually...
Doesn't that say something? I mean, look, to your point,
it
like
says
there's
a
a bunch of stuff in our airspace above us. And if you're not freaking out, like if some dude was walking up and down your street at night and it was dark and you were like, hey, I don't know if they're carrying a weapon. We don't know who this person is. We've never seen them before. They're cloaked in random clothing so you can't see their face. You'd be calling the cops, right? Being like, gotta come over. Like something's freaky. I'm worried, paranoid. And the idea that we're all sitting around like, yeah, I wonder what that is. It concerns me that the people that should be concerned aren't freaking out.
Well, and this is where we are starting to see them. I mean, Congress, it's got all of its failures, and we can do a whole segment on those, or a week-long segment on those. But Congress is definitely in tune to where their constituents are. And the fact that there were these steady intrusions over, populated places along the East Coast that the government still hasn't given a good answer to. Just saying, hey, don't be worried, isn't saying, hey, we know what this is and we've taken care of it. And so now I think we're definitely seeing a Congress that's more alert. Their eyes are, very wide right now. Where they go with it, I mean, because half the time lawmakers, when I bring up these issues, they don't want to talk about it for one reason or another, whether it's classified or whatever. But even lawmakers coming out of a classified briefing in December didn't have any answers. I mean, and to put on top of this conversation, 3 or 4 U.S. bases in the UK were invaded by these in December. And guess what? The U.S. government had to lean on 60 British forces, members of the Royal Air Force. 60 of their forces came to those U.S. bases to help them figure out what was impeding U.S. airspace. And again, at Langley in Virginia, they had to move an entire fleet of F-22 stealth fighter jets, next generation fighter jets, became immobilized, that they had to move that whole fleet because of these intrusions, I believe, over a 17-day period. And so what is, I mean, I guess, all right, so you spend time talking to a lot of politicians, like a lot of elected officials in Congress. Have you talked to any folks at the FBI, the FAA, the DOD? No, I hear what they say. I monitor them, but I'm a congressional junkie. I've been covering them. I call them my wayward children. Congress is the worst branch, but also should be the best branch because it's the branch that our founders empowered to be the voice of us, the people. Right. And so that's my baby.
Okay. But do you think, so, I mean, because that does beg the question, are they, I mean, you brought this up a moment ago. Are they just not read in, or are they being kept in the dark, or does no one know?
Well, that's the thing. So we're hearing, and so I do have sources outside of Congress, but the thing is, I don't think they know. And I think this is where, for a while, for months and months last year, I would approach lawmakers on this and they would roll their eyes and roll their eyes. And that's where I've learned, because there's no terminology to use on these things, that I'll use drone or I'll use UAP or whatever. If you want to call it a tea kettle floating above New Jersey, I'll call it a tea kettle. But right now, the US government actually has no idea what they are. The further you get from the power centers in government, whether that's the White House or Congress and these, top officials in Congress, it seems like there are many theories out there. And I think that's what this Congress is coming in kind of set to do, is to uncover those. And again, because it gets very sensationalized quickly with X-Files and that stuff, or it becomes dismissed very quickly, like, hey, they just bought that at Walmart, it's fine. Right now, we have a large chunk of this Congress, this new Congress, focused more on the middle, just saying, hey, can we get simple explanations for this? And as of now, the Pentagon and FBI have not been able to even provide those simple answers. And I think that's where you're starting to see lawmakers get more unsettled. And at the end of last year at askapol.com, we had Eli Kaine, a former Navy SEAL.
Yeah, Navy SEAL.
He's a Navy SEAL, and he's like, no, y'all should be freaked out.
That says something, right? If Eli Kaine, who probably doesn't get freaked out about much, gets freaked out, you go, okay. Before the holidays, all of this activity is happening over New Jersey. The media is going nuts, the members of Congress. And then it seems like after the holidays, the issue went away. Is that because the drones went away or because we suddenly care about other things?
It's because we're Americans and who's the American Idol this week? We get very distracted.
So the drones are still there.
As far as I know, and they haven't. And so the exact quote from Eli Kaine, the former Navy SEAL, who's now a Republican in Congress, is, I don't think everything's fine. Like, the people who are paying attention are unsettled, and especially as they keep pressing the Pentagon and FBI for answers and hearing no answers, it is unsettling to the core. And now, yes, lawmakers would love, like, I've been a reporter covering Congress 19 years, so I've covered for Playboy and Rolling Stone, I covered cannabis and those issues, and incoming Secretary of State Marco Rubio at one point quipped with me, oh, you just want to talk about pot? And then I ask him about this issue, and he's like, hey, let's talk about pot. They would rather talk about anything than this, because this kind of shows how powerless they are. Because they've been asking these questions now for months and months, more than a year, and they haven't been getting not only satisfactory answers that they can share with their constituents, they haven't gotten satisfactory answers for themselves and their families and their communities, etc.
I had Seb Gork on the show the other day, and he is the incoming senior director for counterterrorism at the National Security Council. I asked him about this issue. He said there's an open source document that lays out that there is a drone corridor that the FAA has been very open about, that there's, it's open source articles and discussions of it in this area, and the governor of New Jersey's read in on this whole thing. Do you buy that?
Last time I talked to Mr. Gorka, he called me a scumbag because I came under the mantle of Vice News. But Seb Gorka, he knows a lot more than me. The one thing that we're seeing with members of the Congressional UAP caucus, especially many of them are from, many of them are Trump supporters, but it's totally bipartisan. But many of them are hoping that people like Marco Rubio, who's supposed to be incoming Secretary of State, well, when he was vice chair of the Senate Intel Committee across from Warner, he was the one pushing very heavily on this issue, and he wasn't getting the answers he wanted. And so anytime I hear someone come down with definitive hard answers privately, or even just in a one-off interview or one-off conversation, I'm like, all right, share that info with the rest of Congress because they're really freaking out. And so if Gorka is fine with this and knows what's going on, hey, when President Trump gets inaugurated here in a couple weeks, please share that information, at least with Congress, if not with all the American people, because right now, no.
Yeah, well,
that's
what
even the governor of Jersey doesn't believe.
Well, that's why I respect Seb, but I'm also like, if it's such an open source document, then why aren't these other politicians aware of it? And why isn't everyone just saying, yeah, look at this, it's an open source document. Here's the thing. There was this manifesto that the guy who blew up the Cybertruck in front of the Trump Hotel over the holidays left, where he talks about an invasion from China and all of these concerns that he had. Are you aware of the document? Do you share the concerns that he raised?
Well, I think with this, I lack a lot of knowledge, but one thing I do know is we have a mental health crisis here in America, and seeing that, veteran blow himself up discussing this issue, like, yeah, my heart bleeds for the veterans who aren't getting the mental health care they need after we throw them into war. He brought up stuff like, where he actually claimed this was China and America working together on anti-gravity, or
right.
He went to places that no lawmakers or no officials who I've talked to have gone. And so with that, I think it's just tragic.
But you don't think that there's any validity to it?
I haven't heard anyone
but
thinks
your
there's
point,
any validity. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. All right. I want to kind of turn to the UAP part of this, because the drone is obviously in the news. But there's been all these hearings about things that pilots have seen, and they've now what used to be called UFOs when I was growing up, probably when you were growing up, are now UAPs. What do we know? Because of these hearings, like in terms of what our government is aware of when it comes to UFOs, UAPs, however we're calling them.
Well, and this is where again it gets sliced and diced according to who you're talking to, but right after that Chinese balloon invaded U.S. airspace last year, I believe, or no, the year before, you had this whistleblower, David Grush, who's now testified in front of the House Oversight Committee. He worked for U.S. Intel, and he's a veteran, worked for Intel. After his public hearing, and half that hearing, he said to lawmakers, I can't answer that question. It has to be in a classified setting. Well, I haven't heard anyone debunk him. And with some senators on the Intel committee, like Senator Warner, talking with him about David Grush's claims, Warner kind of looks at me like, hey, there's an answer for that. I can't tell you about it publicly, which is what they don't give me when asking about the drones. And so with that and those claims, because he claims there was craft that the U.S. government has recovered, and that, there's biologics that were recovered. Again, I have not heard anyone in the U.S. government refute that publicly. And when he was brought in before the House Oversight Committee in a public hearing, right, left, and center in Congress came away saying he's very credible. And since then, they've had a string of maybe 3 to 5 classified skiff briefings, and so there are, and he's not alone. There's other pilots. There's Lou Elizondo, who just dropped a book last year and then went on Daily Show and all those. There was a second public UAP hearing last year in the Oversight Committee in November, right after the election. And Congress is definitely intrigued, or large swaths of this Congress are intrigued and think the federal government is hiding stuff from Congress and the American people on, space programs, for lack of a better term, UAP, UFO stuff. But no one's really said that they have the smoking gun for that. And so we're going to continue to see that investigation roll out, even as we're seeing more attention brought to the issue from these drone incursions. And I think the big takeaway is the American government does not have complete control of U.S. airspace. And that is unsettling everyone on Capitol Hill who gives this subject a second of their thought.
It's amazing that what you just said, where it's like, we have no idea about the way the lawmakers react between the drones and the UAPs, right? With the drones, it's, we don't know anything. With the UAPs, we can't tell you, which makes me believe, so I'll ask you this. How much has the U.S. government, particularly the Pentagon, admitted when it comes to the existence of alien craft or being?
That's where, if you actually look at the history books, this, and again, I'm new to this issue, but if you look at the history books, there has been a history of reportings of these, and even the Roswell incident, there was initial reporting from the Air Force saying, hey, there was this unknown craft, and then next day it was kind of like wiped from the presses. And so you have varying degrees of skepticism within Congress, looking at, because the big overall fear with lawmakers, especially on the Congressional UAP caucus, is that they have there's extra governmental power being brought in to this issue. By that I mean, Trump and the Doge Committee, Elon Musk, they're going after the administrative state. What's the administrative state? That's kind of the fourth branch of government, unelected bureaucrats who are running things. That's the fear with this issue, is that there's this fourth estate at work here, where with those SAPs or special access programs, the big claim from that whistleblower, David Grush, was that, hey, Congress, even though the Constitution says all the funding needs to come from you, hey, there are programs being hidden from you that are using your funds, but that are, not disclosing this to you. And so, again, at the, pressing lawmakers on this, pressing two senior senators of the Intelligence Committee, Senator Rounds, Republican from South Dakota, and then, again, Senator Gillibrand, Democrat from New York, pressing them on this after, they fought hard to get more disclosure in the National Defense Authorization Bill, or NDAA, 2 years ago. Well, a year after it passed, I was like, hey, do you believe that Congress now knows everything? And they were like, no, we believe that the executive branch is still hiding stuff from us in Congress. And so I think that's kind of the big takeaway to me, is Congress doesn't believe the executive branch on this, and Congress is now on the hunt. And so we'll see how that ends up.
Yeah, but has the Pentagon admitted that they have a program? Have they come clean and say, yeah, we monitor this stuff? Maybe not we have it, but we monitor it?
The Pentagon, from what I hear, is no, not really. The Pentagon allowed a balloon to invade U.S. airspace. And so what the Pentagon is now telling members of Congress is, hey, we need more sensors, we need more money, because that's what the Pentagon wants, is more and more of our money. But because they say they can't view different layers of the sky. And if you remember, after that Chinese balloon came into U.S. airspace, the U.S. Air Force then, in a matter of days, shot down 3 different objects.
Right, but that's the thing. If you could shoot down the balloon, I just don't get this. It's like, here's the drone, here are these things. Send something up. Maybe you don't catch it. Maybe you just take pictures of it. But there's something so odd about the inability to just say, we'll just go up there and hang a drone out until it comes by and then we'll photograph it. I don't get it.
Well, and that's what I'm really planning to push lawmakers on here in these next couple of weeks is, have they shot anything down?
Right.
Have you seen it? Have you asked to see it? And a lot of times lawmakers stop short of asking to see those pictures because one of those objects was brought down over Alaska. And initially those senators said, we never asked to see it. Well, and then Senator Sullivan said maybe he did see some things, but they're fuzzy on it. And so that's where, especially these days, the digital camera era or the digital phone era, I think that's what's kind of awoken Congress too, is because now they're seeing a lot more objects, getting a lot more reports, whether from pilots or from Jane and Joe Citizen, because us as the public, the more we record stuff, the FAA is supposed to know everything flying so that when we're flying home to grandma, our plane doesn't hit X, Y, and Z in the sky.
Exactly.
And right now, we just don't have that certainty, which is unsettling to let's demand our money back.
Yeah. Matt Laslo, keep at it, brother. I appreciate it. Everybody go to askapol.com because you can see the questions he asked. And I love hearing the reaction from the lawmakers. So I appreciate you joining us and what you're doing out there to get answers for us, because it is scary, and you're holding these guys accountable and making sure that they know what their primary objective is, which is to keep us safe. So thanks a lot. I appreciate you joining us. Have a great weekend.
I do love making them squirm.
Have a great weekend, Matt.
Cheers.
Great conversation with Matt. Thanks for tuning in. We've got a huge week lined up as we get ready for the inauguration. Remember, all the information on the inauguration and the transition that's at SeanSpicer.com. Sign up for my free newsletter. We will see you back here on Monday. Have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.